Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Beijing tries to capitalize on Taiwan's controversial rocket alert. China's Communist Party watchdog warns business of graft crackdown. Taiwan election, what it means for ties with US and China. Gods and gangs, how China seeks to spread its influence inside Taiwan. Need for speed, China on track to test 450 km/h high-speed train in 2024. Beijing tries to capitalize on Taiwan's controversial rocket alert. Diplomat. China has been strategically spinning a narrative to downplay its aggressive actions against Taiwan and influence the upcoming election, according to a report by The Diplomat. The Chinese government has orchestrated a disinformation campaign in which state-affiliated media criticizes Taiwan's national warning system and the ruling Democratic Progressive Party for attempting to spread panic. While public opinion in Taiwan is divided on the issue, China is attempting to diminish Taiwanese vigilance and make the recent satellite alert seem insignificant. The Chinese narrative has spread to US-based platforms, such as Facebook, which has an active Taiwanese user base. China's Communist Party watchdog warns business of graft crackdown. Financial Times. China's ruling Communist Party has warned that it will intensify its anti-corruption campaign, targeting the finance, agricultural, and pharmaceutical sectors as well as state-owned enterprises. President Xi Jinping has called for tenacity, perseverance and precision in the fight against corruption, and has used the campaign to target both genuine corruption and political rivals. The campaign has gradually broadened to include the private sector, with senior members of China's military and state-owned enterprises recently coming under scrutiny. Taiwan election, what it means for ties with US and China. Deutsche Welle. Taiwan's presidential and parliamentary elections will be held on Saturday, January 11th, and are being closely watched by both China and the United States. China views the self-ruled democratic island as part of its territory and has not ruled out using force to achieve its objective of bringing it under its control. Meanwhile, the US, who acknowledges the People's Republic of China as the sole legitimate government of China, is Taiwan's most important strategic partner. The territory's contested status is a constant source of friction between Beijing and Washington. Beijing has increased its military activity around Taiwan in recent years, and Chinese fighter jets and warships now regularly operate in the Strait of Taiwan. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party, DPP, supports Taiwan's separate identity from China and wants to reduce Taiwan's economic reliance on Beijing and deepen relations with other democracies. The main opposition Kuomintang, KMT, favors close ties and dialogue with China but denies being pro-Beijing. The relatively new Taiwan People's Party, TPP, is also contesting the elections. Gods and gangs, how China seeks to spread its influence inside Taiwan. The Independent. A planned visit by a Chinese delegation to Taiwan, carrying a statue of the sea goddess Mazu, has been halted by Taiwanese officials. The delegation claimed that their purpose was solely religious, to attend a procession in Mazu's honor. However, Taiwanese officials believe that the visit was an attempt to interfere in the upcoming presidential election and to influence Taiwan's democracy. Last year, Taiwanese officials warned of attempts to use Mazu to influence the nation's politics and called for participants in religious exchanges with China to safeguard the country's best interests. Need for speed, China on track to test 450 km/h high-speed train in 2024. South China Morning Post. China's State Railway Group plans to complete production and testing this year of a prototype for what could be the world's fastest high-speed train. The CR450 model would have an experimental speed of up to 450 km/h and a commercial operating speed of 400 km/h. The train could potentially cut the travel time between Beijing and Shanghai from over 4 hours to as low as 2.5 hours. China's railway network is considered essential to the country and its 1.4 billion population, and the high-speed rail system is expected to boost the economy. Xi Jinping calls for stable China-US ties in letter to longtime American friend. South China Morning Post. Chinese President Xi Jinping has written a letter to a longtime American friend, Sarah Land, praising the role of ordinary people in advancing US-China ties and pushing for more people-to-people exchanges between the two countries. She expressed hopes that renewed exchanges could lead to mutual understanding and affection between people from both nations. The letter comes after Xi's meeting with US President Joe Biden in San Francisco, where she unveiled a plan for 50,000 young Americans to visit China for study and other activities over the next 5 years. However, issues such as the trade war, tech rivalry, and Taiwan continue to cloud bilateral relations. Protect Taiwan by further integrating it into the global community. Hill. The U.S. is steadily working to bind Taiwan into international and multilateral institutions and agreements to prevent China from annexing the island, says Elliot Wilson in Nikkei Asia. While America is committed to helping Taiwan maintain a sufficient self-defense capability, it does not have an absolute commitment to using military force to defend the island, which is at the heart of its strategic ambiguity. Internationalizing Taiwan through organizations such as the UN, the World Health Organization, and the International Civil Aviation Organization would raise the stakes for Beijing if it tries to annex Taiwan. Maldives president meets Xi, woos Chinese tourists amid India spat. Nikkei Asia. The Maldives is seeking to attract more investment and tourists from China as relations with India sour. A significant diplomatic row erupted between the Indian Ocean archipelago and India after Maldivian ministers made disparaging remarks about Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Angry Indians have been pushing for a boycott of the Maldives, which is known for its idyllic resorts. At a business forum in Fuzhou, Maldivian President Mohamed Muizzu vowed to diversify tourism products and offer new experiences, asking China to send more travelers. Last year, India was the top sender of tourists. The hashtag Boycott Maldives has been trending on social media, with Bollywood movie stars and cricketers urging people to explore India's islands and beaches instead. Ease My Trip, one of India's biggest travel platforms, announced it was suspending all flight bookings to the Maldives. The Confederation of All India Traders urged exporters and traders nationwide to refrain from conducting business with the Maldives. U.S. is weaponizing new economic tools to slow China's war machine. Bloomberg. The U.S. government is preparing to implement new rules that will ban U.S. investments in Chinese companies suspected of aiding the development of advanced military technology. The executive order, signed by President Joe Biden in August 2022, covers a wide range of sectors, including semiconductors, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence. The move is part of a wider campaign by the U.S. to deter China's technological advancement, following the country's trade war with China and sanctions on Chinese companies. The ban is expected to have a significant impact on Chinese industries and could result in a loss of vital investments. However, critics argue that the ban may not be effective due to China's ability to secure funding from non-U.S. sources. Furthermore, the ban has raised concerns about compliance and uncertainty, with some companies opting to avoid investment in China altogether. The U.S. government has denied seeking a complete decoupling from China and has stated that the rules are not intended to impose sector-wide restrictions. Chinese football officials forced to make corruption confessions. The Independent. Former Everton midfielder and ex-coach of the Chinese national football team, Li Tai, has confessed to his involvement in bribery and match-fixing in an anti-graft documentary aired by Chinese state TV. The confessions were aired just days before the Asian Cup tournament following a years-long investigation into the underperformance of the men's team. Li claimed to have arranged nearly $421,000 in bribes to secure his position as head coach. The Xi Jinping administration has launched a major anti-corruption crackdown on Chinese football, with more than a dozen officials of the Chinese Football Association investigated or charged. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your trusted observer from the 6 Degrees world. Today, we have covered a range of news stories from China's attempts to downplay its actions against Taiwan, to the intensification of China's anti-corruption campaign, and the upcoming Taiwan elections. We also touched on China's planned high-speed train, President Xi Jinping's letter to an American friend, and the U.S.'s efforts to protect Taiwan by integrating it into the global community. Additionally, we discussed the Maldives' efforts to attract Chinese tourists amid a spat with India, the U.S. banning investments in Chinese companies, and the confessions of corruption in Chinese football. Now, let's dive a bit deeper into these stories. In regards to Taiwan, China's disinformation campaign aims to diminish the recent satellite alert and influence the upcoming elections. By criticizing Taiwan's national warning system and the ruling Democratic Progressive Party, China is attempting to downplay its aggressive actions and reduce Taiwanese vigilance. This is a strategic move by China to exert its influence and control over Taiwan. Moving on to China's anti-corruption campaign, President Xi Jinping has called for tenacity and precision in the fight against corruption. The campaign has expanded to target not only genuine cases of corruption but also political rivals, including senior members of the military and state-owned enterprises. This campaign serves multiple purposes for Xi, allowing him to consolidate power, eliminate potential threats, and maintain control over key sectors of the economy. The upcoming Taiwan elections are of great importance to both China and the United States. China views Taiwan as part of its territory and has not ruled out using force to bring it under its control. On the other hand, the US is Taiwan's most important strategic partner and supports its separate identity from China. The contested status of Taiwan creates constant friction between Beijing and Washington. The ruling Democratic Progressive Party wants to reduce Taiwan's economic reliance on Beijing and deepen relations with other democracies, while the main opposition Kuomintang favors close ties and dialogue with China. China's efforts to spread its influence inside Taiwan, such as the planned visit carrying a statue of the sea goddess Mazu, have been met with resistance from Taiwanese officials. They believe these visits are attempts to interfere in the presidential election and influence Taiwan's democracy. China has been using various tactics, including religious exchanges, to exert its influence and control over Taiwan. In terms of infrastructure development, China's State Railway Group is planning to test a prototype of what could be the world's fastest high-speed train. This train could potentially cut the travel time between Beijing and Shanghai from over 4 hours to as low as 2.5 hours. China's high-speed rail system is considered essential for its economy and population, and this development will further boost its transportation capabilities. President Xi Jinping's letter to an American friend highlights the importance of people-to-people exchanges between China and the US. Despite ongoing issues such as the trade war, tech rivalry, and Taiwan, Xi expressed hopes for mutual understanding and affection between the people of both nations. This letter comes after Xi's meeting with President Joe Biden, where he unveiled plans for 50,000 young Americans to visit China for study and other activities over the next 5 years. The US is also actively working to protect Taiwan by integrating it into the global community. By binding Taiwan into international and multilateral institutions and agreements, the US aims to raise the stakes for China if it attempts to annex the island. This strategy helps maintain strategic ambiguity, as the US does not have an absolute commitment to using military force to defend Taiwan. In the Maldives, relations with India have soured, leading the country to seek more investment and tourists from China. A diplomatic row erupted between the Maldives and India, resulting in calls for a boycott of the Maldives by angry Indians. The Maldives is now looking to diversify its tourism products and attract more Chinese travelers. This situation highlights the delicate balance of power in the region and the complexities of international relations. The US government's new rules banning investments in Chinese companies suspected of aiding the development of advanced military technology are part of a broader campaign to deter China's technological advancement. This move follows the trade war between the US and China and sanctions on Chinese companies. While the ban may have significant impacts on Chinese industries, critics argue that China can secure funding from non-US sources. Compliance and uncertainty are also concerns, with some companies opting to avoid investment in China altogether. Finally, the confessions of corruption in Chinese football, including former Everton midfielder Li Tai, shed light on the ongoing anti-corruption crackdown in the sport. The Xi Jinping administration has been targeting corruption in Chinese football, investigating and charging officials of the Chinese Football Association. This campaign is part of Xi's broader efforts to clean up the sport and maintain control over key sectors of society. That wraps up today's news. Now, it's your turn, my dear audience. What do you make of these stories? Do you have any thoughts or questions? Join the discussion and let me know your perspective. Remember, in the 6 Degrees world, every voice matters. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.